So when the last video ended, I was talking about how the Creator started speaking with me in the spring of 2020. And I think I was in my calendar at about April or May of 2020. And that's when I left off the video talking about Kim Jong-un, the 94 East, being the beast from the East, because 9 plus 4 is the code. It's part of the code that I'm always talking about, the Pi code. 1914. 9-4 is part of the code to the Revelation 13:18, the 666, the mark of the beast. 1 plus 3, that's 13. That equals 4. See? And 1 plus 8 equals 9. That's 9. So the 1914 or pi equation, or the 413 equals pi mathematical code that we've all known our entire lives, is all part of the 9-4 code. And 9-4 is 13 for the 13th Merovingian family. And that's where I ended yesterday's video. Love is God, God is love. So you can go check that out and catch yourself up on this one, because I'm going to keep going and talk to you about how the Creator started speaking to me, so you can hear from him like I did, because sharing is caring. Here it was, April 11th, and you can see that I was researching the breakdown. Here is how my brain felt fried. So when we got up here yesterday, we were talking about how these images of prints in the red and black started to affect me, and I heard messages within myself about the beast from the East having something to do with Asia. It's like this image. I talked to somebody that we can't see, but you know why? It's because all my life I had faith that I could hear something from within myself. I didn't know it was the Creator, because in my house we didn't talk about such things. I didn't come to know anything godly until like I was 22, 23, somewhere in there. So when I heard this voice communicating to me, not as an audible voice, but as my inner knowing that what I was hearing telepathically is really the only way to say it, to communicate it to this world. And so still into this day, the Creator speaks with me, and it's the foundation for faith, Emunah, because if the Creator allowed us all to see Him and experience His glory and fabulousness, what good would faith be? You know what I mean? People would just want to feast on Him, God forbid, because of His goodness, and that isn't allowed. It's like you can't just let anybody's dirty feet into your house. You know, you work hard, you sacrifice, you buy a new house, and you're not just going to let anybody up into that house. It just doesn't work that way. So yeah, human beings, people, they do need to be tested. And to be tested, there has to be faith, emunah. And so the emunah that I was experiencing at the time I was being spoken to was so deeply ingrained in me, because it's just as close as my own inner voice and inner knowing and trust. And there's nobody I trust more than myself. In fact, there's nobody I trust at all except for Hashem and myself. It wasn't just Kim Jong-un, the beast from the East, that I was being made to watch. I was watching the Pope, and what you see here is a part of the ceremonial staff that he used, the Pope, in the spring of 2020 to commit the Easter ceremony. And if you look closely, you'll see that the bird is reaching into a hole in its innards, and there's 3 trails of sinew to the baby birds. And I thought that was mighty disgusting. So, as I said, I began watching the Pope as well. I have a whole library, like they have a whole library. You can see those started in April 12th of 2020 and so on. So keeping track of the things that I saw has become my favorite pastime. His name is George, or Jorge Mario Bergoglio. Take a good look. I didn't alter this photo. Anyway, I'm attaching this link to my Google Doc so that you can learn about him, Constantine, the Roman Catholic Church about their devious plans, about who they think they are, and how it connects to Paisley Park and the Ku Klux Klan, who Kirk Johnson gives props to here by saying, "Ooh, look, Lulu." When you look at the word Ku Klux Klan backwards, you can see clearly the name Lulu right in the middle. So here, when he says, "Hey, look, Lulu," he's giving props to the Klan. Every bit of what I'm saying has to do with Paisley Park being a prison, a productivity prison. And if you look at the landscaping from up above, you can see the Eckankar Center across the street. It says Space Monkey Eck Center. That is the Eck Spiritual Center. They have everything to do with what was going on at Paisley Park as well. And the song Wally. If you look real closely, to me, the reason I said Space Monkey is because this portion here looks like the top with his hands up, you know, doing a peekaboo type thing. And then right here we have the bottom, which would be the legs. That's why it says Space Monkey. Here's another view. This X Center was founded by Paul Twitchell, and it was currently run by Sri Harold Klimp. And I thought Harold Klimp was connivingly close to Howard Kornfeld, the HK. Much like Hell's Kitchen. Throughout the Prince investigation, this X Center, I believe, is referred to as the facility. If you look at the name Eckankar, you can see what I've done here with uppercase and lowercase letters, and clearly it represents Shaka Khan, Cancer, Canker, and car. Anyway, it's a Khan. See? C-K-A-N, Khan. It's the E-G-G. It has everything to do with why there's an egg at Paisley Park. If you continue reading this essay, you'll find lots of letters and numerics. You'll find how in 2016 I wrote this. He knew the loopholes, was shown how to win against those that would see him not alive. He sang about them in their faces, transcended the rules and bestowed hidden messages laced with epic music. Even Erykah Badu says she was going underwater with $3 and 6 dimes. Yeah, you may laugh because you didn't do your math. See how the 1999 New Master album shows him as a Matrix machine man? If you haven't watched the pineal gland video yet, you should. It will make you really aware. See how I did that? There's all these random screenshots because even these ones, they're information, like this one, for instance. The world that we were in felt void. So I would look up a certain word and screenshot it. It felt like it was missing. The world was empty. The thunderstorm that I was talking about in part 1, it felt gray. It felt acidic. It felt like the world that I once knew was over. Or, for instance, this screenshot that means nothing to you, but to me, I can look at it and know that when I saw this Coroni district in Peru, I was like, wait, we're in COVID lockdown, and Coroni or Corona, it sounded the same to me. So I would take a screenshot of super random things, but also because they had Bear Creek Mining Company there, and it sounded to me like a mine that wasn't opened yet because they had future projected earnings for their investors. And it reminded me at the time, the Coroni District Bear Creek Mining Company reminded me at the time of the slaves in Egypt and how they were going to be used and abused by the big letter G. So it was Asia, it was the Pope. And then you can see where the screenshots fall into the CCTV of Prince's alleged last day when he was walking in and out of the doctor. On that note, you can know that I've been researching the investigation, the death investigation of Prince Rogers Nelson and or Prince for, 4.5 years now. This is actually a good screenshot for me to be on because what it is Prince had promoted this CD special, and it's called the Bat Can. And what's interesting about that it is in Paris in 2015, there was the attacks. And I think it was 2015 because it was during the Piano and a Microphone tour. And that's my point is allegedly the tour had to be canceled in Europe because of these Bataclan. Now remember, it's Bataclan. One L makes the difference, and he promoted the Batcan. So what I'm saying is everything that he did foresaw the future, and he was making reference to it so that we could talk about it here and now. And when you look at the spring 2020 history, you can see that's when I first came across the Bataclan. Here that is on the search on Wednesday, April 15th, is when I first came across the Batcan. I just think it's very insightful that the Bataclan attacks changed history in a way in Europe, in the way that the military and the government can militarize a place within a certain amount of time. It's funny because at this time, I felt like the world was like closing in around us as an American people. But I also started to realize, and I'm going to try to show you from the history here, you can obviously see Prince things around, but what you also see is Tree of Life depictions, things that I was studying at the very same time. And it was things like this. As long as I breathe, you'll be remembered. It was things like this that let me to know that I was dealing with, the one I call Love Sexy. It was Prince, but I just started to recall in the spring of 2020, or be able to remember, that it was him that I met in the afterlife when the door opened. And the door is the door to wisdom. So in retrospect, when I look back at this history, I'm able to explain it. But at the time it was happening, no idea what was going on, and I thought I was losing my mind just a little bit, but like I said, not really, because of the inner knowing. You see this photo, Prince's Choice, drought-resistant grass seed. You know what my mind told me during this spiritual awakening during this time because of this meme? Here on April 22nd, it was raining again really hard, like it did in the beginning when I showed lightning all around me. It's like the song. So you can see that I'm outside taking pictures of the grass because the water droplets stuck in a weird way, and it wasn't frost. Let me mute this. It was this droplets of rain, and it wouldn't shake off my finger, and it was freaking me out, and it felt like it was hard to breathe. And so then I put on this mask and I went outside, and I was under a blanket with this towel on my face, and I was inspecting the rain. I was talking about how you were going to appreciate me someday. And because of the drought resistant seeds, the Prince thing, I felt like at the time that these were like eggs that were feeding the evil in the world, like they were Luciferian in some way. That sounds crazy, but I told you in the part one, a lot of this stuff was embarrassing because it's like when you go through a spiritual awakening and you, I don't know, man, what would prompt a person to do this? It's not lunacy. It's because I trusted the voice inside myself, but it was a bit like being on acid sometimes, which yes, I have done. So I know. So it's kind of the same, except for you're acting it out in your real life. What I mean to say is, yes, I know what drugs feel like. And this situation was not drugs. It was just, hey, remember what happened when you died, and pay attention to this and pay attention to that. I simply looked at a picture like this, and this inner knowing, this voice would tell me that the one we know as Prince, the one I met in the afterlife as the creator, he was like a time traveler, and he had lived these lives before. It's what he told me. He'd been used before. He was contractually bound. It's wrapped up with CERN. Prince R. Nelson spells CERN in the middle, and I have videos that go into detail on that as well. So the time traveling has to do with ancient bloodlines, and I believe maybe what I call sky people. You can see, Prince. I was reading the book, and when I was reading the Beautiful Ones book, it lets you to know that we were talking about two different princes. But here in the book, you can see how little Prince's arm is really long and strange looking here on the side, and the hand looks unnatural. Also in front of him, the shadow looks kind of satanic, and the red hand of the Pharaoh is on his shoulder. There's shadows in the windows. When you look real closely at the chain and the shadow and the winks of the eye, you can tell what these Luciferian type Kingdom Hall participants, what they're trying to portray about themselves and get away with in plain sight. This is April 23rd, 2020. You can see this image in particular. This is prints on Easter, on or about Easter, and I started to notice that there was two different princes. This one over here on this side has this weird thing coming out, and over here this one doesn't have that. And when I noticed that, I put the fact that with the arm over here that wasn't quite normal, with the fact that maybe we were seeing something other than an arm here, because I remember in the afterlife the Creator showed me his ability to change and transform, and how I think maybe his parts had been replaced or used or something like that, because he's very, very ancient in one way and took on a form in a different way. I'm not sure. It's a great sacrifice, and it's really hard to talk about. Images like this with the inner voice would tell me that to you, you might just see a black blob in the background behind. But to me, what I saw was, what was explained to me in the afterlife was the other. There was another vanity, shadowy, female, satanic type figure that was surrounding him and attached to him in some way, and that's what I remembered when I saw photos like this. So though a person just may glance at it and think nothing, I'm telling you, these are the things that happened at the time. There was lots of mentions of plectrum electrum and electricity. I had written things like celestial being, electric man. Here that is now. It says, when I told you I would write backwards and upside down, this one over here to the far left, it says celestial backwards. That's what you're seeing there. Celestial, not human, my birth date, and electric man. Sacrifice of Victor, plectrum electrum. Occasionally you'll see the word Christ in some of my writings. I am not a believer in Christ. It was just, I was asking myself questions. I don't hide the fact that I was baptized in my life as I learned to look for God, but then when I was in the afterlife and told that was completely against what Hashem wants us to do, and in fact having a false idol and putting your belief on Jesus, which is a false idol. These drawings, they just came out of me. You can see plectrum, electrum, because Prince would ask the question, what is plectrum, electrum, and the fact that they both have the cross right in the middle. When I wrote plectrum, electrum, I wrote electric murder, because there was some things that I had seen in the afterlife about electrocution, and that's what plectrum, electrum is. If you come back to my Google Docs, all of these have been written since the spring of 2020. Ann Tollefson, Regulatory Affairs at Paisley Park and in Oregon. My first Afterlife Memories, 13, is based on all the pharmaceutical practices and satanic practices that they do for soul possession. And there's all types of information in here about the Kingdom Hall, how they program and possess. Pharmacology is Andrew Kornfeld's specialty, and this is why he was prescribing sedative-type drugs. Andrew himself had Suboxone, Ativan, and anal suppositories. Dr. Schulenberg, the media doesn't tell you this, but the investigation does, he prescribed Percocet, Valium, clonidine, and hydroxine. Not only that, he had access to Valium in his office because he gave men vasectomies, which is why they met there early, and he could have supplies accessible by 7 in the morning. Because yes, these are the texts, and here Kurt allegedly saying on April 7th at 5:45, good Mr. Doctor. So anyway, the back area, the back doors that they're using, they say it's all for privacy, but believe you me, when you investigate Dr. Schulenberg the way I have, you find that that's just not true. Recall earlier when I mentioned plectrum, electrum, electric. This is a screenshot from the video 7. Do you see all the electricity around him? And if you watch the video, he comes up in the glass tube. If you're hearing some of these things for the first time, I know they sound out there. And I felt that way when I started hearing them too, which is why I look like this. I had so many things on my mind. I didn't know what was happening to me. I began losing weight. I took this specific picture of the weight loss because I remember feeling like I was going to be growing angel wings, that I was getting my wings. So I don't know, I took this picture. I think this might have been one of the times I was pushing like 4 days without sleep. This is something, this picture that I have in my hand was posted on the Prinstagram at one time. This field here was my bedroom display in this jacket that I made. But at this time, you see, I have the picture in my mouth. This is what happened that night. Without God, without Hashem, I mean, I didn't exactly know what was happening at the time, but of course I had out my Bibles and everything as I've shown you, and I ran all these things that were happening, this information that was coming to me. Who was I to be hearing these things from our Creator or Prince or whatever else? But you don't dispute what you know is true when you know yourself as well as I do. But this is what it looks like, and this is me, like WTF. If you look it up in the dictionary, there it is. Just a few moments ago, I mentioned the Klan and the props that Kirk was giving to the Klan. And you can see here during this time, there's some investigation on Kirk. Because think about Kirk Johnson's last name. And think about the lyric, "We went riding down by Old Man Johnson's farm." Remember, I said there was an entity, a darker entity attached to the Creator when I met him in the afterlife. That's why we see the love symbol entwined with the serpent. This is a very long story. It goes back to the original sin of sex. However, for the sake of the media rock drama saga at Paisley Park, Kirk is the one we want to be looking at. The media would have you to believe that Prince grew out his natural afro. A person who had his own hair salon in every single residence and hired Kim Berry and made sure that he had all kinds of dues all the time to go with the image, to go with the clothing. You're not just going to wear a fro. The reason the fro was worn can be seen here. Please pay close attention. You won't regret it. Here is allegedly Kirk Anthony Johnson walking into the Memorial Healthcare with Prince. When you zoom in on the image of Kirk, you see this blobby image around his neck, which to me looks very much like a wig. Here's a little closer image of that. So if you're hot and you're bald, or you have on a skull cap or a bald head and you're taking your wig down, that's what it's going to look like. Of course, when you're putting your wig on, this is what it looks like. Imitation Prince. You ever have imitation bacon bits? You ever ride down by Old Man Johnson's farm? KAJ Productions, same as King James Version, New Testament, Ku Klux Klan, Constantine, in cahoots. Kirk isn't just Kirk either. He has a look-alike too, and it's probably the mysterious bodyguard Julius and or Kirk's alleged cousin Sean Powell. You see, Kirk wanted the glory. When you have narcissist mentality, well, I'm sure you've known a narcissist in your lifetime. I know I have. This is not Little Prince. Look at the eye gesture. This is Little Kirk. And they are trying to project an all-new image for the one we knew and grew up with, for me, since 1983. So, of course, you can know I'm not having it, and that's why I'm telling this very long story. And tell me this, why is he wearing his coat after? Why does he have the nerve to put on Prince's coat and wear it around after? If you're not familiar, it's because he's serving the Klan, and this is the coat that Prince wore in the Betcha by Golly Wow video when he's at the gas station in the very beginning. These people that dressed up like Prince and exploited his power, well, they're going to have to pay. This day, 4/21/2016, was a plan. it was a planned sacrifice. But to make sure that didn't happen on that day, something happened before that day. But we're not there yet. I told you in the first video I was going to take you on the same journey I got taken on so you can comprehend and understand the full story. You guys, the reason that after 2010 he started appearing in these afros is because of the need and use of clones and lookalikes. This could be anybody. This, however, is a post-mortem photo. If you look at these photos that are being publicized lately on any of the Prince websites, you will notice that they are post-mortem. One of the things that I was told in the afterlife was that our darling dear was not only being electrocuted, but being made to wear costumes and like his hat. Those were for torture. The big chain hat, the white chain outfits that he would wear, it somehow caused him pain. It was explained to me. You can see here this image of the ear. You know how he always wears the ear cuff? This is an image of an ear that appears to have been burnt by an electronic ear cuff implant that are used to send signals to slaves through the pharmacology and satanic practices of Hollyweird. This is somebody else dressed as Prince. This is a lace front wig made to look like hair. Prince Rogers Nelson's eyes were never that wide set. Never. You know whose eyes are wide set? Judith Hill's. She's one of the lookalikes, and she is very, very guilty. She lied about them being in a relationship. She lied about who was on the plane. She lied about what happened when she was on the plane and in the ambulance. This is Natalia Phillips. She is the singer-songwriter from California who 70% of the phone calls from March of 2016 to April of 2016 were to Natalia Phillips from Paisley Park. And this is because the imitation Prince wearing the wig and or look-alike her performing was helping the imitation Prince to perform and write songs since the 2010 media lie about the hip surgery. There were lookalikes. And I mentioned before, it's not just the Prince that has the lookalikes, it's Kirk Johnson too, because if you look closely at this image of Kirk Johnson, it looks like he has on a wig, you know, the thing you would put on before you put on a wig. You see the difference in the color in his head. And then secondly, I want you to notice that he's wearing an Under Armour outfit, a black Under Armour outfit. That's allegedly Kirk Johnson. However, Kirk Johnson is 5'4" tops, and probably, 125 pounds naturally. You can see from this image of him with this group of women that he is short. You would assume that they're all 5'2", 5'4", and he's barely above them. So over here, very short guy. That's who we're talking about, short and small. But check out these images. As I said, everyone has a look-alike, and Kirk's, I believe, was his cousin, Sean Powell, and he went by the name Julius. Because if you look closely, this one here on this side is a smaller guy, okay? But look down here. What is this? What is this 200 and some odd pound guy? Look at his back spread. Look at this guy. Who is he pretending to be Kirk? Okay, look how big his legs are. That is not little old Kirk Johnson. And moreover, if you look at this image right here in this big fat head, this person that on CCTV is allegedly supposed to be Kirk Johnson leaving the doctor's office on the phone, but yet we are never shown any texts at that time. Believe that. Here that is a little closer up, and you can see the hair mark that I'm talking about. If your phone is, going to cooperate with you, you can see how this person is getting ready to put on a wig, because you can see that rubberish stuff around the head. And then also, you might wonder why Dr. Schulenberg is seen leaving with this. What is this? Is this a respirator? Are you practicing psychopharmacology and soul possession? Are you practicing witchcraft? Yeah. You guys, back to 2020. As April rolled into May, this is me reading the Beautiful One's book. Candles burning, wax all over the place, magnifying glass. Check it out. See the rim of the magnifying glass? As I was reading the Beautiful One's book, it became so clear to me that the author was not the one that I had watched and followed for basically, it's been 40 years now. But so when I started reading the Beautiful Ones book, I knew I wasn't hearing Prince's voice. It's the tone, the things that Dan Piepenbring says that Prince said. For instance, right when the book opens up, Dan writes, his phone rang, and Prince had never called his cell before. So that sentence lets us to know he had always used a landline or something else, and that on April 17th, that Prince called his cell phone. That's because, like I mentioned earlier, there was a sacrifice plan for 2016, but that sacrifice didn't get a chance to come to fruition because of the Moline plane landings and what happened there. So what I'm saying is, when this Prince called Dan on the 17th of April, it was a different Prince than he was accustomed to talking to. I believe it was Judith Hill, because later on in the book, it goes on to say, it says Prince held up his phone and said, check out what I'm listening to or something like that, and put on a new Judith Hill groove. Judith Hill's groove or anybody else's groove is not the funk groove of Prince Rogers Nelson. They sing in different keys, and they don't use like the B minus, B flat scale, the pentatonic Egyptian type scales that Prince did. They don't. And this is what the lie is. It's said that Prince had hip surgery in 2010. That's just a media cover story, because when I met him in the afterlife, it was July 20th, 2010. In regard to the July 20th, 2010 death, I offer you these lyrics. In France, a skinny man died of a big disease with a little name. By chance, his girlfriend came across a needle, and soon she did the same. I died from an overdose of heroin by a needle. I know it sounds like I wrote in one of my papers, kind of cuckoo cuckoo, but it's the truth, and I'm truth, and that's what I'm going to say. When you start hearing from the Creator, and these people, they were able to access his intellect. It's why the Third Eye Girl band did like Pretzel Body Logic. It's why you see these arms that aren't really arms, that are like pillars on either side, and how they're all blending as one, because the Creator, he said, I'm not a woman, I'm not a man, I'm your conscience, I am love, I'm something that you'll never understand. So after 2010, after these people had the ability to tap into that contractually, this is the music they started doing. They changed it into their own way. You think of Prince, and you think of Prince with a guitar, or at a piano, but most likely with a guitar. That's why the song Guitar, not like I love my guitar. Prince is synonymous with the guitar. We can look at guitar pictures for days and days and days and days. Skirt! What do you guys think about this photo? What do you think about how this looks? Do you think Prince had back fat that looks like a woman's breast? Forgive me for saying, but that's how this appears in my eyes. This is a still from the Love Sexy concert. And also, there's no booty. This is the chain mask I mentioned earlier. It was a form of torture and to hide the way that he looked due to gruesome torture. The majority of the clothing will have details that I can't remember fully, but he told me and showed me how he was tortured for singing about love and getting this message to me and all of us within his music, and it had a lot to do with the costuming as well as the shoes and high heels. Check out this screenshot from 2020. It's supposed to be Prince. I mentioned post-mortem photos earlier. There's a lot of photos out that depict a body that was either deceased post-mortem or so drugged that they were not able to even move. So when you start seeing images like this, you'll always notice that the right eye, the forward-facing right eye, the one staring at nothing at all, is usually always covered by his hair or a bandana of some sort. And I'm asking you to look at this eye, not as if he's doing side eye, but if there is a fake eye, one eye staring at nothing at all, because the torture and the drugs and the psychopharmacology. My point about the guitars is a band that played like that isn't just going to set that guitar down. And in the Beautiful Ones book, at the bottom of page 15, he said he was finished with making music, making records. I'm sick of playing the guitar. At least for now. I like the piano, but I hate the thought of picking up the guitar. Nonsense. That's why Ida, the bass player, was brought in, and Hannah as a drummer, all the girls. You'll notice that after 2010, with the performances, that Prince will put all the huge guitar solos or performances off to Hannah, or Ida, sorry, and not play them himself. That's ludicrous. And they blame it all on this hip surgery and pain medication, like that's the story. But I'm telling you the real story. So he would never say he want to put down his guitar. Remember that story about how he's taking all these Vicodin, hydrocodone for the hip pain, but he didn't have any on his blood or in his urine when it was tested. Now listen, hydrocodone usually stays in the urine for about 3 days, and it will show up in a blood test for around 24 hours after the last dose. So Prince was such a heavy drug user after his hip surgery, the alleged hip surgery. Then why did Schulenberg tell Detective Nelson after taking the blood sample he did not locate anything unusual in Prince's blood work, stating there is virtually nothing there? However, on April 21st, when his blood was taken at the medical examiner's office, it showed 67.8 mcgs per liter of blood. The doc said if a cancer patient was changing their patch 6 times a day, their levels would be 3 to 5 mcgs per liter of blood, and Prince's was 67.8. Check out the ID19 code. Everything about Prince was meant to be a mystery until now. Even the certificate, the birth certificate, says Prince Roger Nelson. When you look at this paperwork from Moline, it says Nelson, Prince. And the birth date reads 6/7/1959, and Prince Rogers Nelson had what, on 1958. At least that's what the birth certificate says. 6/7/58.